A single ember glows in the dark, and a hand cups around it like it is the last warm thing left in the world. Outside, the wind moves across a frozen plain with nothing to stop it for 100 miles. There is no fire without tending. There is no tending without waking every few hours, all night, for months, for years. And somewhere in that endless tending is a question that should trouble you more than it does. Most people assume the Ice Age was simply cold. A season stretched too long, survived by fur and by luck. But that isn't what happened. For over 100,000 years, glaciers advanced and retreated across entire continents, and temperatures dropped low enough to kill almost everything that could not migrate, hibernate, or grow thick enough to insulate itself from a world trying to freeze it solid. Mammoths had fur a foot long. Cave bears weighed as much as small cars. Even they struggled, and many species did not make it through. A hairless, slow, thin-skinned primate should not have been among the survivors. You have no claws. Your canine teeth are small. You cannot outrun a wolf, and you cannot outswim a seal. By every reasonable measure of what makes an animal built for cold, humans should have vanished somewhere in northern Europe 40,000 years ago. One more skeleton in the permafrost. Instead, you are reading this. Something about the failure itself was the advantage. Consider what a body without natural insulation is forced to do. It cannot simply endure. It has to solve the problem, deliberately, again and again, because biology gave it no shortcut. That forced dependence on solving problems, rather than surviving passively, may be the exact pressure that built the version of the human brain capable of language, planning, and cooperation on a scale no other Ice Age mammal ever needed. Evolutionary biologists studying cold adaptation in primates have long noted something strange. Compared to other mammals living at similar latitudes, humans invest an unusually large share of their energy budget in brain tissue rather than in fur, fat, or muscle bulk. A polar bear solved the cold with a body. Humans solved it with a network. To understand what that network actually looked like, picture a single group. Perhaps 25 people somewhere in what is now southern France 26,000 years ago. The night outside is negative 20 degrees. Inside a shelter built from mammoth bone and hide, bodies are pressed close enough to share warmth, breath visible even indoors. Someone is repairing a bone needle. Someone else is turning strips of hide inside out, scraping fat from the underside with a stone tool sharpened that same day. This was not a moment of survival. This was infrastructure. Archaeologists working sites like Sungir in Russia have uncovered burials from this period containing thousands of painstakingly carved ivory beads, sewn onto clothing that no longer exists but whose stitching pattern still does. That level of tailoring implies something researchers did not expect to find in supposedly primitive winter camps. It implies fitted, layered clothing engineered with the same logic modern outdoor gear companies use today: air pockets, wind barriers, moisture layers, built by hand, one needle passed at a time, night after night. A garment like that is not made by one person working alone. It requires someone hunting the animal, someone processing the hide, someone else crafting needles, someone teaching a child the stitch pattern that took their own grandmother a lifetime to perfect. Cold did not just test bodies. It tested whether a group could function as a single organism distributed across many skulls. And here is where the story becomes less about temperature and more about something colder still. Ice Age winters lasted 6, 7, 8 months in some regions. For most of that time, no plants grew, and unpredictable game meant unpredictable food. A modern hunter-gatherer, or a modern human dropped into that world, would face a brutal truth within the first bad week. No individual, however strong, however clever, however well-equipped, can guarantee their own survival through a famine that lasts a season. Only a group can. This is where researchers studying the archaeological record of shared hearths began to notice a pattern that reframes everything about what these communities actually were. Bones found at long-term winter camps show consistent evidence of food sharing across entire settlements, not just within family units, even among people showing signs of injury or illness that would have made them unable to contribute for extended periods. In a purely competitive world, a wounded member is a liability to be abandoned. In an Ice Age world, a wounded member alive today might be the one who remembers, months from now, where a hidden cache of nuts was buried before the first snow. Memory itself became a survival resource, and memory is fragile in a group of one. This is the quiet contradiction sitting underneath the entire Ice Age. The harshest environment humans had faced did not select for the strongest individuals. It selected for the most connected ones. Consider what happens to isolation under sustained cold stress. Modern physiological studies on cold exposure show that prolonged isolation increases cortisol, disrupts sleep architecture, and measurably impairs decision making within days. The body reads loneliness the way it reads hunger, as a threat serious enough to reroute its own chemistry, which means the emotional bonds inside an Ice Age band were not comfort, they were regulation. A shared fire lowered stress hormones as reliably as it raised skin temperature. You have likely felt an echo of this yourself. A strange calm that arrives around other people during difficult nights, a calm that has nothing to do with logic and everything to do with 100,000 winters your ancestors did not spend alone. This is the moment where the story usually widens into something larger than any one campfire. Ice cores drilled in Greenland reveal something almost impossible to look at directly. Temperature swings during certain periods of the last glacial era were abrupt, sometimes shifting by 10 degrees within a single human lifetime, not across centuries, but within decades. Entire ecosystems that generations had learned to read, migration routes, plant cycles, animal behavior, could become obsolete before a person's own children reached adulthood. Knowledge that took a lifetime to build could become useless in a season, and yet the species did not fracture into extinction the way ecological theory might predict for a large mammal facing that kind of instability. Researchers studying this period increasingly point to a specific cognitive trait as the likely explanation, one so ordinary that it rarely gets credited as a survival tool at all. Storytelling, not decoration, not entertainment, a transmission system, a story about which valley flooded during the worst thaw, told around a fire, could be inherited by a grandchild who never witnessed the flood themselves, encoded not in stone or written symbol, but in rhythm, repetition, and memorable structure built for a mind that forgets facts but remembers narrative. This is very likely why certain patterns appear again and again across unrelated ancient cultures separated by oceans. Warnings wrapped in myth, survival lessons disguised as folklore, danger encoded as monster. A story is a portable, self-replicating record that does not require ice, stone, or soil to survive. It only requires another mind willing to listen, which means the true technology that carried humans through repeated glacial collapse was never fire, or clothing, or tools. It was the ability to place knowledge inside another person's memory and trust it would be passed forward. This reframes the entire question people usually ask about the Ice Age. It is not why did humans survive extreme cold. It is why did a species evolve to need each other this badly, long before the cold ever arrived, as if some older pressure had already prepared the species for exactly this kind of catastrophe. Some researchers studying early hominin sites suggest cooperative behavior predates the worst glacial periods by hundreds of thousands of years, meaning the social architecture that saved humans during the Ice Age was not built for the Ice Age at all. It was already there, waiting, shaped by something earlier and less understood, and the ice simply revealed how necessary it had always been, which raises an uncomfortable possibility worth sitting with. Perhaps the Ice Age was not the test. Perhaps it was only the moment the answer became visible. Every trait that let a hairless primate outlast mammoths and cave bears, the sharing of food with the injured, the sewing of another's coat, the story told to a child who will never see the flood it describes, is still sitting inside you right now, mostly unnoticed, quietly running in the background of an ordinary evening. The next time you feel calmer simply because someone else is in the room, notice it. That is not a modern comfort. That is the oldest surviving strategy your species has ever built, still functioning, long after the ice that demanded it has gone.